say 70% of what we work on that people think is AI is integration and automation. Would you trust an AI agent or a series of agents to go and build your application end to end? We are now starting to build a lot more private AI models. They're not LLMs, I'd call them smaller language models that serve a single or a limited purpose, that you don't need a big, wide platform. We've got multiple examples where people have reduced, by modernizing an application, they've reduced their cloud spend by 90%.
So, welcome back to Bits and Bots. We have today Paul Bates with me, who has over 2 decades experience in IT and get very long journey from technical all the way to having his own company and being more on the sales side. And currently he's director at Uptiq, where they're working with modern cloud engineering, AI, data automation, platform engineering, and much more. Hi, Paul, and what would you add to it, and who you are in your own words?
Yeah, you mean 2 decades? It's almost longer than that these days now. So I've been in and around the industry for a while, and like you said, currently one of the directors, one of the founders at Uptiq, where we're delivering some really interesting things. We're delivering modern applications, for AI, using AI, powered by AI for lots of our clients, all underpinned by modern cloud platforms where we don't just build, we also operate the platforms for clients as well. So we look to establish long-term relationships with our clients.
Yeah, I think, it's one of the things which, especially people, when the entry level got much lower with AI, a lot of people don't know. I build it and it's going to be running. That's what I see, a lot of people coming with the leads who don't have IT background, and when they don't know, you still need to put work to maintain it.
Yeah, and we've got to be honest. I mean, we could talk for 2 hours about this subject alone, but we've got to be honest. It's eroding some of the work that developers do. It's dramatically increasing their and improving their output. But ironically, developers don't spend all day developing. There's a lot of other things that these guys need to do. And I think, we've almost stopped calling our team developers now. It's more software engineers. We are building things for people, and AI is one of the tools that enables us to do it more efficiently. But it does, for me, there's a lot of scare, fear, everything in the market at the minute. And I think people are probably right to be nervous. We're not going to see every single developer and engineer be gone in a year's time. I think there's an awful lot more. The quality's not great, and there's an awful lot more for them to do.
Yeah, exactly. And as every tool, you need to tell it what to do and how to do to get a good outputs. What I think a lot of people underestimate. And usually, with the new stuff, new roles are coming as well. Like we didn't have term of prompt engineering, vibe coding a few years, 3-4 years ago, and so on. And we only know our agentic and so on. So I think it's only, how do you call it, getting better and evaluating from year to year.
Yeah, and we'll say, listen, it's an ever-changing market, but being honest, I think it's really transformed the commercial landscape for us as well. Since all of the press has come out saying developers, very much like lawyers and lots of other information based, that everybody's expecting them to be disrupted by AI. We are busier than ever. We're hiring faster than ever. We're getting more work than ever. We've actually contracted more work by the end of February this year than we did the entire of last year. So I think there's a lot of noise, a lot of people. Like I would say to people, AI, yes, it is replacing some of the role of developers, but people still need these applications developing. And who are you going to go to? You need somebody who can build and engineer these things for you. Would you trust an AI agent or a series of agents to go and build your application end to end? Maybe for an MVP, but for an enterprise product serving some of the largest customers in the world, I'm not sure I would trust it right now. It's going to make us develop faster and at a lower cost for our clients. But yeah, we need people to ensure quality, security. You absolutely need human in the loop. Very much like when you're using the application as well, you need human in the loop. It's the same for development.
Yeah, and I think we're getting to a new level, as we know, a lot of people say every company is an IT company, but right now with this layer added over the last few years, it's even, the accessibility to being AI, having a AI or IT in your company, it's even lower. So you're gonna, I think, need even more. Your local grocery shop gonna need someone to being able to get their IT up and running, not only their website, which gonna go there for, stay there for 20 years later on.
Yeah, I mean, we hear all horror stories as well. I mean, I probably saw 3 horror stories last week and about 15 memes last week about people trusting an AI agent to deploy code completely into production and it deleting databases. What do you mean? We see these
Uh,
5, 10 times a week. So yeah, do you mean? And the other thing that you've got as well with AI, sometimes AI isn't the right solution. You need it to be deterministic. You need that deterministic innovation as well as part of your delivery model. And, you can get AI to build you a deterministic platform, but I mean, there's an awful lot of examples that I could give you where you do need certainty of data. You need to completely avoid hallucinations, and you do need human in the loop to check and validate things before you push that commit button.
Exactly. And I think another thing, people, you don't always need AI because it's still, more expensive to run and so on. A lot of stuff you still can solve with simple automation.
Yeah,
If you have,
I'd
for
say
example,
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'd say 70% of what we work on that people think is AI is integration and automation. Probably 80 or 90% actually. True AI, I mean, is not required. And you then become less reliant on a third party product as well. If you're using automation, it's a lot simpler workflow that can be executed within your environment, controlled within your environment. And with certainty, and you mean if A happens, if you do, I mean then B, C, and D will also happen, and you can. You mean with AI, you still have that fear of hallucinations and completely unnecessary cost and ability to monitor and troubleshoot with a very, very doing a set of rules and instructions is very easy to detect. If something works, if it doesn't work, where has it gone wrong? And you can build that into your error process and then you support service as well. So yeah, I mean it is an evolving world, but we still we still see a massive interest in workflow and integration development rather than just AI.
exactly. And I think, also if you know what output you want to expect, always, as you say, confidence. If you have, I was doing project for construction site business, they have structured data and they need particular output every time the same based on the data. So if there's if there's error in the data, they want to know it, that something is not structured. They want to exactly, so the data is source of truth. They don't need AI for it. Maybe on the level, where the data they check, but it's on them, the data validation. But it's not not even, but you expect the same output every time. Why do you need AI in it, And I think absorption on the not tech native industries, adoption of the automation in IT, it's still quite low compared to where it can be. Not even, talking about putting AI. If we use AI for developing it, that's a different story. But yeah, there's, I think, a lot of there's still big market to being able to use stuff which are not AI.
Yeah, and then if you look at the overall cost as well, you look at the cost of a platform. And I
Exactly.
know we were talking another time about servers and even everything that you need to run these platforms. If you're running a really, really simple workflow on a function or a little container app, you could be talking $50 or $100 a month. If you need a huge AI platform to run that, the cost of delivering that and then the skills that you need to deliver that are going to be even astronomical in comparison. So yeah, there is still very, very much a place for well-written, governed, simple workflows. I think, we still see a massive opportunity, and we're very busy doing exactly that right now as well.
Yeah, same here. I see whole spectrum, but there are also some people who completely ban AI, and I think that's not also a good way. Have you had experience with customers like this? Oh, we don't want to use AI at all.
No, I've seen nervousness around it. You hear the stories that personally I've not come across that yet. However, we are now starting to build a lot more private AI models. They're not LLMs, I'd call them smaller language models that serve a single or a limited purpose, that you don't need a big, wide platform. And these are use cases where AI is an incredibly good use case. But we've seen a lot of demand for people to build their own private platforms, maybe based on an open source technology stack. that is hosted where they can have absolute governance and certainty of what data goes in and what data goes out. I mean, it doesn't need to know what color somebody's eyes are or create a funny GIF or something like that. It needs to do one job really, really well. And I can see that being quite a transformative thing in the market where people are building their own AP in a very, very private model. And then this then comes back to, the skills that people will demand. You need really, really good architects to build that environment. You need people who understand the technology stack. You need to make sure it's an efficient technology stack. So you need all of those skills to deliver that model. And if you do it right, like we have, it means you've got a really high quality product completely in your control, both from a security, but also a cost perspective, that you can really control the cost of that underlying, say, AWS platform as a great example. But we've got quite a lot of experience hosting using AWS platforms for private LLMs, doing fantastic service, and you can really keep those costs down, which is really positive. Because I think if you put it on a public one, you'd just be consuming tokens at quite a high cost quite quickly.
Yeah, and also if you don't put guardrails, it can go completely bananas and crazy. How many, you've seen this, that, they spent hundreds of thousands of tokens overnight because they didn't put stop or just let it go. And I think that's also another, and I think costs, we having also on-prem, I can see, after a few years of cloud only on the market almost. Of course, not everywhere, but the boom was, we all want to have cloud like a few years ago. Right now, everyone wants to have AI. But suddenly, I can host it and it's going to be much cheaper. Or I can host it even, local server, local computer, or in the server suddenly. And also with what is going, politically on the world right now, I think, combination of these two things make people, okay, we can also have a server, or we can, have a server in the local server, data center, or there are different ways to solve it, but I can see much more interest into hosting something on your own versus hosting something only in the cloud.
Yeah, I think that what would you mean? I've come from that world. My background originally was from university. I was actually a software engineer from university, and I moved into the world of infrastructure and servers. I was there. You may not be able to tell by my young looks, but I was there for the original .com boom and burst. So we saw everybody putting money into it. So I've seen the cycles multiple times. We've also seen the what I would call the first cloud hype cycle, where everybody was trying to host, and then you've seen more the public cloud hype cycle as well. And you're absolutely right. We've seen a lot of people go into public cloud and really been bitten on cost. And I think a lot of it is, some of the things you were touching on before around the financial viability of hosting assets in the cloud. That if people are moving legacy applications, and lots of very large VMs, if they need to shut a data center and do a lift and shift migration in, it can cost them 2, 3, 4, 5 times more than actually planned for. A lot of the work that we do is we go to customers and look at application modernization using modern languages, which are significantly more efficient from a code base and therefore the platform. We've seen lots of examples of people writing applications in Python. If you put them in C#, I can't remember the exact numbers. It's about 30 times more efficient for certain use cases. Yeah, we go in, we help people modernize the language stack, but we also help them embrace cloud native technology, looking at containers rather than VMs, or looking at functions, adopting more open source technology like Postgres versus very, very large Oracle or SQL platforms. We've got multiple examples where people have reduced, by modernizing an application, they've reduced their cloud spend by 90% for the applications in scope, I will add. Yeah, if we can get 70, 80, 90% reduction, you're getting a modern application that's more performant, and you potentially saving. We typically see an ROI in under 2 years for that application as well. So you're getting all the benefits, and you're seeing a significant ROI and a reduction in your OpEx, and using CapEx expenditure instead. So you can even application modernization is an opportunity I think a lot of people haven't fully explored yet. And I still think there's millions of applications out there to be modernized that do make cloud a viable choice and make it a good. I mean, you could potentially host it on your own container platform in your own data center, but again, you're still going to be reducing the cost of that. So I'm rambling now because I'm quite passionate about how people modernizing apps actually save a lot of money and get significantly improved business outcomes at the same time.
I think you touch on, I have background in automation robotics from my studies.
Yeah.
So, you touch up on very interesting topic regarding, which language to choose to what use
Yeah.
cases. And, you're saying, C# or Python and so on. And some people are not aware that a lot of in robotics, it's still, in C and C++ because you need, very fast feedback loop on whatever you read from the sensors. So, you see something, especially on the autonomous stuff. I was working, for example, with autonomous drones or autonomous, like small cars we used to have during university years, or autonomous car. And you get a lot of data which you need to process very fast. And based on this, you get the behavior of the hardware, this or the other way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And majority of it, it's still in C or C++, even if you have a newer languages, because how fast it's operate, for example.
My programming background was in Pascal and COBOL, so there you go. I'm showing my age there. Yeah, and I think that language choice is very, very much overlooked. But like I said, I think people are completely overlooking not just the language choice, just looking at the opportunity for business impact and cost impact by modernizing applications. But then the way we try and implement the other thing that we are seeing when people are modernizing apps is again, previously you and I have spoke about data sovereignty, and that's something that is becoming a lot more of a hot topic at the minute. Particularly in Europe, you've seen, you're hearing stories about people moving off anything American. So they're looking at now, do we need to host it on our own platform or a sovereign platform? I've talked to some guys in Germany last week. Absolutely has to be on a German-owned, German-based platform for an application. And we try and architect all our applications. So, and anything that we do, that it can be moved anywhere, that you have that portability of asset. So again, this is where you need some clever guys, far smarter than me, to make sure that we design those principles into our engineering principles and we embed them. So when we're delivering a service, an application, a workflow, whatever that may be for a client, that they have the flexibility that they could easily move that platform somewhere else if they need to. If the political climate shifts, they've got the opportunity to move it. We're not saying you could just flip a switch and it's gone, but you could move it within 2, 3, 4 days potentially.
Yeah, so how to be cloud agnostic or tool agnostic. And I
Yeah.
see, a lot of former solutions or applications are not designed for it. With one of the customers, they were considering to move out of the, of the cloud platform. They estimated few years before they are able to get out of there because of the complexity and how much you are into, tools or resources which this particular cloud provider is using. So I think that's, and what you're saying, also with the regulations and the political scene and regulations in EU, especially, of course, other parts of the world have their own. It's also getting more and more important to not get, fined and so on. But I also see some people, I can get fined. It's going to be cheaper for me than actually moving it somewhere. That's other way around as well, which people see like fine is cheaper to being able to pay than move. But I think also a lot of what you're saying, one thing, a lot of the architecture is getting more and more important. And it was a bit dusted, in my opinion, for a few years. More like, architect is just, grumpy old man who telling you what to do and never code. But actually right now with AI, with political part of it and regulations, and also being more cloud agnostic, it's getting more and more important to have a good architecture who can support all of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it can make a difference both on, from a performance perspective, a security perspective, a flexibility. Just locking yourself into a massive object store can mean you're locked into that cloud forever because your egress to get your data out could cost you $1 million. And we've seen examples of that in the past. So having somebody that can be an architect that can design an application from development to long-term management is really, really important. And it's more than just the platform. I mean, we were talking before about tokens and token usage. It's making sure if you are using things like AI, how do you manage, control, predict that cost? That could be on cloud native resources where you've given the platform the ability to spin up and spin down. We've seen a lot of people being burnt by completely unpredictable costs that a platform, and I'm not blaming AI for this one, it could just be bad design, bad control, touched on guardrails before, it could be poor guardrails. So making sure you've got a sound observability stack and a sound sort of FinOps type stack as well. My only issue with FinOps is typically you find out after the fact where you need a really good observability platform in place. So you see the issue as it happens. So again, making sure that these architects understand that end to end as well. So you're not just building something for an app, you're monitoring it and you're also optimizing it based on the data and the information that you get.
Exactly. And here we also see the change. Before you paid for the server, fixed cost, you don't care whatever you're using the server, that's yours. But with moving to the cloud, the costs differ a lot and they also change pricing from year to year. So, if you
Yeah.
use something last year and it was cheap, doesn't mean it's going to be cheap now. Of course, there is some techniques to being able to optimize the cost, reserved instances and so on, but it's changing much faster right now versus before, I don't know, once a year, once every few years. And also with AI, we can see, the pricing of AI, it's also changing. So I think observability is only getting more and more important because of it. And having a, good alerting system, having the reactions for it, being aware what's going on from cost perspective in your system as well.
Yeah, and I mean, observability is key. We've got some guys at Uptiq who are really passionate about it. They've come from the observability backgrounds, and we do have a really strong understanding. And you mean making sure that you partner with the right companies, because some of the more legacy observability platforms can be a huge cost in their own right, but they also may not have the key support for some of the more modern platforms. And so it's making sure that yes, you choose a platform that also aligns with your, I guess, the degree of modernization that you have in your preferred tech stack, making sure that you can get the logs, the traces, the metrics for everything that is within your stack. And I know that sounds really obvious, but we see an awful lot of gaps in certain products that they can't track what you'd expect them to be able to track.
I think other thing is sometimes if you have external observability platform, it's a cost of data transfer. I think people are not very aware that, you need to move the data to being able to see what's going on in your system. So if you, I don't know, use, for example, Datadog out of your AWS, you need to move this data from AWS to Datadog. And that has cost in itself as well.
And potential security concerns as well, that you're moving
Exactly.
data off. But we see this, and this isn't just limited to observability. It can also include things like security platforms, things like, Microsoft Sentinel is a good example, that you also need to maintain and look at your logs and your log retention policy and your strategy for optimizing those logs. Because you can, again, we've seen examples of hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in spend on logs. So if you log hoard and you just keep everything, that bill can, if you've got a large environment and you're a large scale enterprise, your log bill can surpass what smaller organizations would spend on their entire cloud environment each month. So yeah, there's lots of other nuances to this technology that you need to be very, very mindful of. It's not having that partner that can come in and make a great recommendation. It's having somebody who can come in and operate and optimize that on the long term for you as well.
And also, what do you actually need to log? Because another
Yeah,
thing, it's too much data also doesn't give you good output if you cannot process it correctly. And it's a lot of noise, which is not really important or valid to being able to know all the time, Don't need to, hard to give up example right now, but there's a lot of
no,
stuff, which we don't need. We can check it if you need it to being able to, and don't have, such a big log cost and to decrease, cognitive load as well, because that's another thing which we can, see. I think the number of information we are getting, it's too much as well.
yeah, and business context as well. And let me give you an example of that. I've got a couple of examples. We we work with a company that manages very, very large events. And in a previous role, we work with a client that does timing for marathons and big sporting events. You don't need to be collecting, logs, metrics, traces, do you mean, on when there's no event. We know that that platform is barely being consumed. But for a very, very, say, the London Marathon was on this weekend, and you were managing all the timing and data for that event where people are, it's got to collect the data, but you've got your friends and your coworkers checking, hey, how well's Paulina doing in this marathon today? You're going to have lots of people dialing in and checking. And even got to sound old now, dialing in, but accessing that data, having collecting very granular data for that short period of time is really important. But you're not going to need to retain that for a long period of time. And you're also not going to need all of that data being collected for a sustained period of time. You just need it for a finite period of time where that information matters. So yeah, we see an awful lot where somebody comes in, it's almost install, forget, thank you, and then they walk away. It is really, really important that you have your strategy. And I know this sounds really obvious. Your strategy includes long-term optimization of your application and the stack that underpins that application.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned also very important to know your customers' behavior and know your
Yeah.
system behavior. When do you have load? Where are your customers? Because I mean, if you have something Europe native only, you don't really need big machines running overnight usually because all your customers are sleeping, or maybe other way around. You not need to have into data centers in 3 different parts of the world because it's not really needed. You don't have that much customer base for it. So by knowing behavior of your customers, of your system, you can also make a good architecture decisions, how it should behave and how to optimize it and how to structure it.
Yeah, anyway, we've got a lot of examples of that where we saved your customer a lot of money and they wondered how. And they were using VDI for some pretty heavy duty applications. And we did this remarkable thing that we turned them off when they weren't being used. And then we booted them all up just before they came into the office. So you've gone from a 24-hour, very, very expensive VDI environment now being run probably 8.5 hours a day. So just again, and this is where I find applications and automation a lot more interesting than my old world of servers and infrastructure, because you do get access to a lot more business context. You are talking to line of business and business owners rather than just talking to infrastructure teams as well. So you have that direct access to context, which in my old world, you never did.
How do you see this transition? Because you mentioned you moved more from technical background to much more sales background and talking to business rather than only to tech teams.
Yeah, I think, I've always been interested in the business outcome. Whatever I've done is, I'd always go and talk to customers saying, it's great that even if you didn't understand this as part of the sales process, you go and talk to them afterwards and talk about, but how has this actually impacted, if you're talking to a law firm, how has it impacted not you in IT? How has this new platform changed how lawyers interact? And that's always been interesting for me because that always elevates your conversation. But I think moving from servers to what I would call more managed services and cloud, your conversation shifted from a product to service, where service needs to be more outcome centric. But you are still limited typically from an IT conversation. We all aspired in the old managed services world to being able to go and talk to line of business people and talk about the outcomes. But you didn't have the relevance. In the application world, you do. You can often be talking to a CEO one day and a developer or a platform engineer the other day. We've been able to, it was a little bit of a learning curve in doing so. Again, if you can talk and be articulate and understand a customer's business challenges, be able to translate those into IT outcomes and then be able to translate those into IT or application or software requirements. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's something I was able to adapt to quite quickly. And a lot of my coworkers have as well. I mean, the original 3 founders met at a managed service provider where we were selling cloud, and we did transition very, very quickly into selling infrastructure, selling Office 365, selling Azure consumption to doing selling automated outcomes and looking at the business impact and a business case for all that. That was how we built the business, on the back of automation and application modernization. So a little bit of a baptism by fire, but we adapted very, very quickly. And I think it's working with people who have that ability to be able to chunk information up and be able to have the same conversation to a finance guy about an application as you could to a technical guy. There's a lot of good people out there who do have that capability, and hopefully we're doing. I firmly believe we've got an awful lot of those in our business.
Yeah, I think, know your audience. And as you're saying, business is much more interested in outcomes versus how you've done it. If you talk to
Yeah,
the tech people, they're going to know all the details much more. Okay, what did you use? How did you do it? And, more in detail. But when you talk to CEO, like, okay, you cut my cost, it's running faster. Great, I'm happy. I don't care how have you done it in detail, because I don't understand half of the words you're going to tell me,
yeah,
usually.
yeah. And it's even more so with AI, right? That's looping the conversation back around is, how is this actually going to help me? Can you demonstrate this? Can you show me something? That focus on outcomes is becoming even more and more critical now.
Yeah.
And I think people are happier, more so than ever, whenever I've worked, about leaving you as the partner to deliver the complexity underneath. They're really I've noticed that gap in abstraction is getting larger and larger and larger, particularly over the last 18 months, that people are caring less about how you're doing it or what you're doing underneath. They want to see progress and they want to see outcomes. That's what we're seeing more and more.
I think also, the speed is increasing dramatically
Yeah.
thanks to AI, that, we need to be able to ship faster. So you're not able to also get to know all the small details to being able to get where you want. You need to also have a bigger trust in people. I always say that, like, that trust is one of the most important things. Is it business, is it tech, and everything, because you need to be able to trust that someone's going to deliver. You need to be able to trust the tool that it's going to, of course, you need to have some backup. But if you don't trust the tool, you don't going to put your data there and so on.
Yeah, completely agree. And we're very fortunate that we've got a really good set of clients who, whenever because trust is a really hard one to sell, right? If you were to say, you've got to build that trust throughout a sales process and sales cycle. But if a client's only got a very short window to actually start an engagement, how can you build that trust? So we're very fortunate that a lot of our clients will talk on our behalf about what we do, how we work, what we've done for them, how we've overcome challenges, and that's how we build a lot of trust, just by being able to get clients to sort of collaborate and almost reference what we do. But trust is critical, and like you said, the speed that we're moving, you're not going to get everything right first time. So it's having that trust that somebody understands that you are following an agile style development model at speed, and you can course correct very, very quickly if something changes. I mentioned private LLMs. The speed, those things are improving and changing at the minute. We could change the underlying platform and technology 2 or 3 times during a 6 or 8 month engagement, because the capability of the platform and the cost in a positive way, you can get more and more from a lower cost platform by changing the platform. So again, going back to architecture, customers trust you to make those choices, but having somebody who can architect an application that supports those rapid changes and innovation and iteration is really important. Yeah. Looping back around, babbling as always, but yeah, trust is what we base our sales process on. Trust needs to come from capability, but yeah, it's a hard one to quantify. As somebody says, why have these customers bought from you? And we often do say trust and capability is why they buy from us.
Yeah, but you
Sorry,
also
I'm rambling a bit now, but that's
no, but I agree. You build it over time. I see it even on my own case. It's not the same scale as you, but you build. I don't have, for example, IT education. First, I build a trust that that I'm curious. I got my first job. Then I build
yeah,
it, technical skill set and some trust that I could get another job. When I could get to consulting. When I went, self-employed. Then I get recommendations based on people I used to work, based on my previous customers sometimes. There is And that's based on trust because you build it over the years. And it doesn't matter if you know solo or if you know 20 or if you enterprise. If you build trust over time, that's accumulated. It's a bit, a snowball effect, in my opinion, as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The more you do it, the more people. The more people. You repay the trust. The more you can get those people talking to other people who you can then demonstrate that trust to. And I think that is important. But again, I think looking at new opportunities that we've had this year, quite a few have come from referrals where clients have said, somebody, a client knows, says, "Hey, who did that work for you? You've got a really good outcome." We then get a referral as well, and that all comes from that trust that you've built over a period of time with clients.
Yeah, that's one way or other way. Sometimes you can have it coming with directions you don't expect. My partner works in the construction site. He was like, "Oh, can you automate it just to help me a bit?" Yeah, sure. Suddenly we're doing 2 projects together. So, some stuff can escalate by a bit by accident sometimes when you don't see it coming at all or you don't see it selling as well.
I think the other way that we build trust, and again, we're not unique in this, but I think it is important that a lot of people, when they're developing a platform or an application, they'll bring in a team of contractors. And for us, we don't use contractors. All our staff are full time employees. And why does that make a difference in trust? But for us, if we can offer a long-term contract to a customer, so if I built an application for you, and then we can provide an ongoing support service for you, you've still got access to the same engineers. And it's in our interest to write the highest quality code because it means that we take fewer and fewer support tickets. So that's another way that we can show, if we can show a long-term commitment to a customer and they show a long-term commitment for us, that also helps building trust. Because we've seen too much of this sort of transient, people come in, deliver something, run away, and they're straight onto the next project. That's not how we'd like to work. So we try and build trust by that longer term engagement as well. And that works really well for us.
Yeah, it's a win-win. Win for you, it's win for them as well, yeah? Because you
Yeah,
wanna,
absolutely.
if you have less support tickets, you need to spend less time on the support for your customer, but they get better quality system and the code.
Absolutely. Yeah, for me, this stuff, it's almost common sense. It's not rocket science, right? If you can build something well, it'll cost both us and the client less time, less effort, less money in managing that platform. You're always going to find bugs, but if we can limit the bugs, limit the frequency, and limit the impact, then we're in a good place.
And I also briefly talked to your co-founder a few weeks ago, and he mentioned that you all been, that there were 2 or 3 of you hands-on. How did you, approach transition? Because I think it's quite a change versus when you do everything yourself in the small company, when you transition to, small corporation at some point. And it changes both your roles, culture, how you interact with the
Yeah,
customer, how you sell to customer. It's, I think, changes everything on every level, kind of, trust as well. Because people usually what I see, from being like on the small company, people trust in you, you as your name, not necessarily. And that's also, brand changing from naming kind of to company even.
Yeah, I think it's a hard one, right? And this is things you're doing. The trouble is when you build something yourselves, you like this, you wrap your arms around it. You're very passionate about it. You want it to be perfect, but you do have to bring other people in because you realize you're not going to scale the business. You're not going to scale our ambitions or the staff's ambitions if we keep this business small. Comes back to that word trust. Putting trust in the individuals, I think, is critically important. Letting them make mistakes and not feeling that they can't make mistakes, and creating a culture that somebody can, if they've got a problem, they can phone you or ping you a message on Teams and go, "Can you help?" And I think the only time we ever I only get annoyed at people is if people make mistakes. That's cool. But not asking for help is where you get frustrated. And we want that culture where people can come to us and ask for that help immediately if they're struggling. I think the other thing for scale as well. Have you ever seen the Brad Pitt movie Moneyball?
Long time ago, and
No.
probably under Polish title. So
Yeah. So do you mean the reason I mentioned that, if we've got one of the best technical guys in the business who's a co-founder, I won't mention names because it'll increase ego, but if you've got a guy who's really good at 6, 7 things, what you've got to realize is you can't replace him very easily with him to scale. But what you can do is you can replace 4 of the things that he does with one person and 2 of the other things with another person. So you actually deliver what they're doing in the aggregate across 2, 3, 4 different people. And that was something that we've realized quite quickly. You're not going to replace an individual, but you can replace what they do, maybe with 1, 2, 3, 4 different people. And that's how we've built the business. Because what you don't want to do is, I mean, if somebody's sick, you need to make sure that you've got capacity in other areas. I mean, it's always going to be the fact when you've got a small business, the day somebody's sick is the day that the other guy's on holiday. So you really do need to make sure that you split that risk across lots of different individuals within that aggregate of the business. And that's how we've built this company. That, I mean, one question that a few of us have been asked is, I mean, what happens if one of you guys isn't here? And we're like, well, we don't do the work. I mean, I think a lot of people perceive that we do all the work because we're there. We're still the face of the business. And particularly when you've got a really good client that you've got a great relationship, we'll be doing a lot of the meetings, but we've got to make it really clear. It's not us doing the work anymore. It's other people in the background. Yeah. I mean, so fixing the problem is one thing. Communicating that you're fixing the problem to clients is another thing as well, because they need to be comfortable that if they get acquired by somebody, could you scale with them? And that's something that's come to front of mind over the last year or so, that we need to be better letting clients know that we're not a 3-person company anymore. I mean, we're nearly 30 people now. And I mean, but it's terrifying. I mean, if we look at AI and automation, I think what we're doing now, if we did this 4 or 5 years ago, we'd have needed 90 people by now, and we don't. We were a lot more efficient in what we do and how we do it already.
Yeah, I can see how efficiency increasing dramatically, and I can see the same issue like what you mentioned, that people see, "Oh, it's only you." I'm like, no, it's
Yeah,
maybe me and someone else, and maybe, oh, but you're gonna do the work. No, someone under me, but we want to work with you. For example,
yeah,
because quite many steps behind you in this journey, but I think it never ends with some stuff. Or you only 5 people, or you only 1 person, or you only 10 people. Can you handle it? I'm like, yeah, you don't need, or people have different point of view. They think, oh, you need 10 people to be able to handle it. And sometimes 1 is enough, or sometimes. So
yeah.
that's also different perception versus what is the reality sometimes, because they are not in the industry.
Yeah, yeah, and that's I mean, just making sure you shape those perceptions in a positive way, right? To clients, to partners, to everybody else, that they do understand there's an awful lot more going on. Um, so yeah, no, it's interesting. But listen, I mean, stuff like that, I'm always fascinated by, because if we're not changing, growing, reshaping how we do things, I mean, life would be boring, right? It makes it more interesting.
Exactly. I'm the same. If something gets too comfortable, I'm looking for a change or next goal or something, because I think otherwise you're bored after some time. Stability is good, but yeah, not for too long.
Yeah, it's like I could never be a product guy, because if you've only got one product to sell and you do the same pitch 5 times a day, every day, I mean, that would kill me, I think.
I have few rapid fire question to
Ye Okay.
wrap it up. One phrase in sales pitch that makes you immediately suspicious.
If I'm being honest. Usually if somebody says, "Hey, if I'm being honest about it," and I'm guilty of this sometimes myself, but yeah, that always makes me think they're not.
What is the one skill every computer science graduate or computer engineering graduate should learn that they aren't taught in university?
Good question. I think interpersonal skills, communication skills, being able to articulate what they're doing to different people is massive. I think those softer skills are very, very frequently taught.
Yeah, by someone who's coming from technical university, I can only confirm.
Yeah, yeah. Well, God, don't you mean I look back to university. I was always quite a loud guy, um, and when you'd have the stand up at the front of the class, I was the guy that would volunteer to go and talk, because everybody else was sort of looking down. But I think it's really. I mean, I always say to my kids, Stevie, you need to learn these skills because they're really, really important. And I think as tech is reshaping, interpersonal skills are going to be more and more important over the years.
I'm more into introverted part, but when I went to uni and turned out that I'm on the extroverted part in this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not easy, but I think, I mean, even just being able to stand in a small
Yeah.
meeting with your colleagues and talk, I think it's just to, and just being able to articulate
Yeah,
well.
especially if you work with the customer or in the consulting, not in the
Yeah.
study team, in the more product-based or company. Then it's more and more important. Software development is 20% code and 80%.
Oh, sorry, was that?
Yeah, sorry.
I thought you were still talking. So, software development is 20% code, and I'd say 80% creativity, right? I think. I mean, a lot of people would say AI now, but I still think. I mean, whether it's creative platform design, there's still a degree of creativity that sits under it. Luckily, I'm probably not the best person to answer that anymore. I'm talking about the outcomes. I should say it's 20% code and 80% sales, because that's what it feels like some days for me. But yeah, I'm probably not the best person to answer that question. But I definitely say creativity. Having good guys who know how to solve problems in a creative way is really, really important for us.
Problem solving, I would say as well.
Yeah.
It can be the same if you call it differently. Which one simple habit or a tool do you use most in your daily work to stay effective as a leader?
Oh God, sadly, and I'm not proud of this, is Teams. My life seems to revolve around Teams at the minute. Um, I'm currently arguing with myself about which task management product to use, because I'm almost interested in learning to vibe code again and seeing if I can build one that fits my needs. But yeah, it's definitely, I've seen a shift over the last several years, like most people. From, I'd say, I've gone from having hundreds of emails a day to probably 20, and 90% of my communication, my calendar, my meetings, everything lives in Teams.
Yeah, but sometimes, I still use the paper for the daily task because it's nice to see also sometimes and just cross it over, get a dopamine boost.
Yeah,
But yeah, Teams and
I have a
calendar, that's
little,
definitely as well.
I have a little desk-based whiteboard in front of me as
Yeah,
well that I use for my
for this way.
quick things to do as well.
Or also for the architecture brainstorming and so on. Whiteboard, I still find better than Miro or something.
Yeah, I think so. I think you can't replace personal meetings as well. I think, yeah, if two of you are together and you can draw something, you get a lot more done a lot faster.
Exactly. And closing question, where people can find you if they need help or if they want to hear more what you think?
Yeah. So if you go to Uptiq, uptic.io, you'll find us all on there, contact details, what we do, even a bit about how we do it as well. It's all on there. Or find me on LinkedIn under, I think my username is Paul S. Bates on LinkedIn.
We're going to link under the podcast. Thank you for today.
Cool. Thanks, Paulina.
That's it for today's edition of the Bits and Bolts with Paulina. Did you like what you heard? Of course you do. Tell your friends.